The massive diplomatic hall aboard Harmony Gate buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 different worlds gathered for humanity's first official welcome into the Galactic Council. Ambassador David Williams adjusted his simple, black suit and tried not to stare at the incredible diversity of alien life forms surrounding him. Some delegates floated in containment fields filled with methane gas, others skittered across the walls on multiple legs, and a few seemed to be made entirely of crystalline structures that hummed with their own internal light. The Trilaxian delegate, a tall purple creature with 4 arms and an attitude problem, had been making snide comments about human technology for the past hour. His translator device rendered his words in perfect English, dripping with condescension about how primitive Earth appeared compared to their advanced civilizations. "Your species has barely mastered interplanetary travel," the Trilaxian sneered, his mandibles clicking together in what David had learned was their equivalent of laughter. "You use chemical propulsion and metal hulls. How quaint. I suppose next you will tell us that humans can repair complex machinery with simple tools." David felt his jaw tighten. He had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, studying alien customs and learning diplomatic protocols. But something about the Trilaxian's tone reminded him of every know-it-all he had ever met back home. Without thinking, he turned to his aide and said the words that would change galactic history forever. "Hold my beer." The aide, a young woman named Rebecca, automatically took the bottle of Earth-brewed lager that David handed her. She had worked with the ambassador long enough to recognize that look in his eyes. Someone was about to learn why you never challenged a human's ingenuity. The Trilaxian's translator stumbled over the phrase, producing a series of confused clicks and whistles. Other delegates leaned forward with interest. The station's sophisticated AI translation system immediately flagged the phrase as linguistically significant and began recording everything that followed. David walked over to a maintenance panel that had been sparking intermittently throughout the ceremony. The station's engineers had declared it a minor malfunction that would require a full system shutdown to repair properly. David studied it for about 30 seconds, then pulled out a simple multi-tool from his pocket. "What are you doing?" the Trilaxian demanded. "That is a Class 7 gravitational stabilizer. It requires specialized equipment and at least 6 hours of careful recalibration." David ignored him and began unscrewing panels with practiced ease. His father had been a mechanic, and David had grown up in garages and workshops where the motto was simple. If it was broken, you fixed it with whatever you had on hand. He traced the sparking wires with his finger, mentally mapping the power flow patterns. The alien delegates watched in fascination as David bypassed 3 separate safety protocols and rerouted power through a secondary coupling that the original designers had apparently never intended for that purpose. He used a piece of wire from his own pocket to bridge a gap, twisted 2 connectors together in a way that made the Trilaxian engineer physically recoil, and then did something with the power regulator that defied every safety manual ever written. The sparking stopped. The gravity in that section of the hall, which had been fluctuating slightly all day, suddenly stabilized to perfect Earth-normal levels. David closed the panels, wiped his hands on his pants, and walked back to retrieve his beer. "There," he said casually. "Fixed." The silence in the diplomatic hall was profound. 47 different species stared at the human who had just accomplished what their best engineers had said was impossible without a full maintenance shutdown. The Trilaxian's 4 arms hung limply at his sides. "How did you know that would work?" whispered the delegate from Kepler Prime, her voice filled with genuine awe. David shrugged and took a sip of his beer. "Sometimes you just have to try stuff and see what happens. My dad always said that most problems are simpler than they look if you ignore what the manual tells you is impossible." The station's AI was having what could only be described as a digital panic attack. Its translation matrices were running overtime, trying to understand the linguistic and cultural significance of what had just occurred. The phrase, "hold my beer," appeared to be some kind of trigger mechanism that activated unprecedented problem-solving capabilities in humans. Within minutes, the AI had accessed Earth's global communication networks and begun scanning for other instances of the phrase. The results were disturbing. Humans said, "hold my beer," before attempting feats that ranged from inadvisable to completely insane. They said it before jumping off cliffs, building impossible structures, and attempting repairs that violated basics, engineering principles. Most concerning of all, they succeeded far more often than probability suggested was possible. The Trilaxian delegate excused himself from the ceremony, claiming sudden illness. In reality, he was rushing to send an urgent communication to his homeworld science council. The other delegates began engaging David in nervous conversation, asking carefully worded questions about human capabilities and trying to understand what they had just witnessed. David answered their questions with the easy confidence of someone who had never considered that fixing a broken machine might be difficult. He told them about human mechanics who could diagnose engine problems by sound alone, engineers who built bridges out of materials that should not have supported their own weight, and farmers who grew crops in soil that agricultural experts had, declared Barron. The delegates exchanged increasingly worried glances. They were beginning to suspect that humanity's casual approach to impossible challenges might represent something far more significant than simple ignorance of proper procedures. As the ceremony concluded and the various delegates prepared to return to their respective worlds, the station's AI compiled its initial report on the phrase, "hold my beer." The document would eventually become the foundation for the most comprehensive xenological study in galactic history. But for now, it was simply a collection of disturbing observations about a species that seemed to view the impossible as merely inconvenient. David Williams finished his beer, shook hands with the remaining delegates, and prepared for humanity's journey into galactic civilization. He had no idea that his simple phrase had just triggered the largest intelligence-gathering operation in Council history, or that "hold my beer" would soon become the most analyzed phrase in 47 different languages. All he knew was that he had fixed a broken machine and made some new friends among the stars. 3 weeks after the diplomatic incident at Harmony Gate, Dr. Amy Foster sat in her cramped office aboard the Council research station, staring at data that made no sense. As the head xenolinguist for the Galactic Council, she had studied over 200 different species and their communication patterns. She thought she understood how language worked across different cultures and biologies. Then the humans arrived and broke every rule she knew. The translation AI had flagged the phrase, "hold my beer," as requiring immediate investigation after Ambassador Williams's demonstration. What started as a simple linguistic curiosity had turned into the most disturbing research project of Amy's career. Her screens displayed thousands of video files, audio recordings, and written accounts of humans using this exact phrase before attempting things that should have killed them. Amy played another video file from Earth's communication networks. A human male stood on top of a burning building, flames shooting out of windows around him. His friend held a camera and asked if he was crazy for trying to jump to the next building. The man grinned, handed over a bottle, and said, "Those three," words that were keeping Amy awake at night. 10 seconds later, he was safely on the neighboring rooftop, having somehow calculated the exact trajectory needed to clear a gap that physics said was impossible to cross. The next file showed a human female attempting to repair a spacecraft engine while in deep space. The ship's computer clearly stated that the repairs required a full orbital facility and specialized equipment. The woman ignored these warnings, said the phrase to her crewmate, and proceeded to rebuild the entire engine using spare parts and what appeared to be pure determination. The ship not only flew again, but achieved better performance than original specifications. Amy rubbed her temples and tried to process what she was seeing. Her assistant, a young Centaurian named Blue, floated into the office carrying another stack of data crystals. "More reports from the monitoring stations," Blue said, his tentacles quivering with excitement. The AI has identified over 12,000 instances of the phrase in the past month alone. The patterns are getting stranger. Amy took the crystals and loaded them into her analysis system. The new data was even more disturbing than the previous reports. Humans were not just saying, "Hold my beer," before dangerous activities. They were actively seeking out impossible challenges, specifically so they could use the phrase. One video showed a group of human engineers who had volunteered to fix a mining station's power core that had been abandoned for decades. The previous repair teams from 5 different species had declared the job impossible due to radiation levels that would kill most known life forms. The humans spent exactly 10 minutes examining the problem before their leader said the phrase and led his team into the contaminated area wearing nothing but basic protective suits. 6 hours later, they emerged with the power core not only repaired but upgraded to produce twice its original output. Medical scans showed they had received radiation doses that should have been fatal, but they displayed no ill effects beyond mild sunburn and an increased appetite. Amy pulled up another file that made her question everything she knew about physics. A human cargo pilot had been transporting supplies to a colony world when his ship's navigation system failed in the middle of a solar storm. Standard procedure was to wait for rescue, as flying blind through electromagnetic interference was considered suicide. Instead, the pilot said the phrase to his co-pilot and proceeded to navigate by pure instinct, arriving at the destination colony 3 hours early. The flight recorder revealed that the pilot had somehow steered through gravitational fields and stellar phenomena that his instruments could not even detect. When questioned later, he explained that he had simply felt where the safe path was and trusted his gut. The co-pilot confirmed that the pilot had been drinking coffee spiked with whiskey throughout the flight. Amy began to notice disturbing patterns in the data. Humans who used the phrase displayed enhanced problem-solving abilities, improved physical performance, and an alarming disregard for safety protocols. More concerning was the evidence that alcohol consumption seemed to amplify these effects rather than impair them as it did with other species. Blue returned with yet another batch of files, this time looking genuinely frightened. "Dr. Foster, you need to see this immediately. The AI has identified a subcategory of incidents that it has classified as reality-defying." Amy opened the new files and felt her 3 hearts skip a beat. These were not simple cases of humans succeeding against impossible odds. These were instances where the laws of physics appeared to bend around human determination. A construction worker had said the phrase before lifting a steel beam that weighed more than his entire body. Security cameras clearly showed him carrying the beam alone, despite the mathematical impossibility of such a feat. Another file documented a human scientist who had been working on a fusion reactor that had puzzled the galaxy's best minds for centuries. After saying the phrase, she had solved the problem not through advanced calculations or sophisticated equipment, but by hitting the machine with a wrench in precisely the right spot. The reactor had immediately begun producing clean energy at efficiency levels that violated thermodynamics. Amy spent the next week compiling her preliminary report for the council. The evidence was undeniable. Humans possessed capabilities that defied scientific understanding, and these abilities were triggered by a simple phrase that seemed to unlock something fundamental in their psychology. The phrase, "hold my beer," was not just an expression. It was a declaration of intent that activated superhuman problem-solving skills and temporarily suspended their species' normal relationship with physical laws. The most troubling discovery was that humans appeared, completely unaware of how unusual their abilities were. They treated impossible feats as minor inconveniences and seemed genuinely surprised when other species expressed amazement at their accomplishments. To humans, saying, "hold my beer," was simply what you did when someone doubted your ability to solve a problem. Amy's final report contained over 3,000 documented cases of humans defying impossibility through sheer stubbornness and creative problem-solving. She recommended immediate classification of the phrase as a linguistic hazard and suggested that all human communications be monitored for its usage. The implications for galactic society were staggering if humans could routinely accomplish what other species considered impossible. As she prepared to submit her findings to the Council, Amy realized that her research had only scratched the surface. If humans could do these things with a simple phrase and some alcohol, what were they, capable of when truly motivated? The answer to that question was something she was not sure the galaxy was ready to discover. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the highest security chamber aboard Central Command, a massive space station that served as the government seat for over 300 member worlds. Council member Thrix of the Andromedian Empire called the session to order with her characteristic calm, but even her usually steady voice carried an edge of concern that made the assembled delegates shift nervously in their various seats, pods, and hovering platforms. The chamber fell, silent as the main display screen showed footage from the Kepler-7 mining operation. What the delegates saw defied everything they thought they knew about physics, engineering, and common sense. A massive asteroid, roughly the size of a small moon, was hurtling directly toward a populated system at incredible speed. 3 separate species had attempted to divert its course using their most advanced technology. All had failed and declared the situation hopeless. Then, the human mining crew had arrived. The video showed 5 humans in a small industrial ship approaching the asteroid with what could only be described as casual confidence. Their leader, a bearded man named Rick, had examined the problem for exactly 12 minutes before making the announcement that would haunt the nightmares of every species present. "Well, boys, looks like we got ourselves a challenge. Tommy, hold my beer." What followed broke every law of physics that the Council's scientists held sacred. The humans had somehow attached their ship's engines to the asteroid and were now riding it like some kind of interstellar surfboard. Rick stood on the asteroid's surface in nothing but a basic atmosphere suit, manually steering the massive rock away from the populated worlds while his crew cheered and took pictures. The asteroid changed course, not gradually as physics demanded, but in sharp turns that should have torn it apart from gravitational stress. The humans guided it safely past 3 different solar systems before launching it toward empty space where it could harm no one. The entire operation took 6 hours. The previous alien rescue attempts had spent months trying to solve the same problem. Council member Vorth of the Crystalline Collective spoke first, his voice resonating through the chamber like wind chimes in a hurricane. "Respected colleagues, we must address what we have witnessed. The human species appears to possess capabilities that challenge our fundamental understanding of reality itself." Delegate Mira from the oceanic worlds raised one of her many tentacles. "The phrase appears to be the key. Our linguists have documented over 50,000 instances of humans using these exact words before accomplishing impossible tasks. The correlation is undeniable. The evidence was overwhelming. Council archives now contained video after video of humans saying, 'Hold my beer,' and then proceeding to violate the laws of physics through sheer determination and creative problem-solving. They had seen humans repair quantum computers with simple tools, navigate through black hole event horizons, and build functional spacecraft from asteroid mining equipment and spare parts. High Chancellor Zeth activated his translation device and addressed the assembly. The most disturbing aspect is their apparent ignorance of these abilities. Humans treat impossible tasks as minor inconveniences. They seek out dangerous challenges for entertainment purposes. The main screen switched to surveillance footage from human colonies across the galaxy. The delegates watched in horror as humans engaged in activities that other species would consider elaborate suicide attempts. They jumped out of perfectly functional aircraft for fun, raced vehicles at speeds that should have liquefied their bodies, and voluntarily entered combat sports where serious injury was not just possible, but expected. They call these activities extreme sports, reported Dr. Foster, the Council's xenolinguist. Our analysis suggests that humans require regular exposure to mortal danger to maintain psychological health. The phrase, "hold my beer," appears to be their way of escalating these dangerous activities to even more impossible levels. Council member Thrix pulled up additional files that made the assembled delegates collectively recoil. These showed humans in military situations, and the footage was genuinely terrifying. Human soldiers said the phrase before charging into battles they could not possibly win, then proceeded to win them anyway through tactics that made no strategic sense, but somehow worked perfectly. One particularly disturbing video showed a single human named Pete, who had said the phrase before attacking an entire enemy base alone. Armed with nothing but basic weapons and what appeared to be complete disregard for his own safety, Pete had somehow neutralized 47 enemy soldiers and captured their command center. When questioned afterward, he explained that he had simply got creative with the explosive charges and improvised his strategy as he went along. The debate that followed was unprecedented in Council history. Some delegates argued that humans should be classified as a Class X unpredictable species and quarantined for galactic safety. Others suggested that humanity's abilities could be studied and potentially replicated for the benefit of all species. The Trilaxian delegate who had first encountered Ambassador Williams spoke with obvious trauma in his voice. "We have dealt with dangerous species before. Warlike races, predatory civilizations, even species that consume energy from stars. But humans are different. They do not simply ignore danger or physics. They seem to personally offend reality until it submits to their will." The discussion continued for hours as delegates shared their own encounters with human capabilities. A trade representative from the Vegan system described watching human mechanics repair faster-than-light engines by hitting them with hammers until they worked better than original specifications. A diplomatic courier told of human pilots who navigated through unstable wormholes by pure instinct, while their instruments screamed warnings. The most chilling testimony came from the military observer who had witnessed human combat engineers. They were tasked with destroying a bridge that our explosives experts said would require careful calculations and precise placement of charges. The humans examined the bridge for 30 seconds, said the phrase, and then proceeded to blow it up using materials they found in a nearby storage shed. The explosion was so perfectly calibrated that it destroyed only the bridge while leaving surrounding structures completely intact. As the emergency session drew to a close, the Council faced an unprecedented decision. How do you regulate a species that appears to view impossibility as a personal challenge? How do you establish safety protocols for beings who become more capable when those protocols are ignored? High Chancellor Zeth called for a preliminary vote on emergency measures. The results were unanimous: immediate establishment of the Human Monitoring Protocol, creation of emergency response teams for hold my beer incidents, and development of evacuation procedures for any system where humans were heard using the phrase. The session ended with a sobering realization. For the first time in galactic history, the Council was not trying to understand a new species to help them integrate into civilization. They were trying to understand humans to prepare for what impossible thing they might accomplish next. The phrase "hold my beer" had become the most feared combination of words in the known galaxy, and humanity was still just getting started. The ancient space station Nexus drifted in the void between star systems, a monument to technological failure that had frustrated the galaxy's greatest minds for over 3 centuries. Its quantum core had been the pinnacle of engineering achievement. When it was built, capable of powering entire solar systems through dimensional energy manipulation. Then something had gone wrong during the initial activation, and the core had been dead ever since. The Catherian Science Collective had spent decades trying to repair it. The Andromedian Empire's best engineers had declared it beyond salvage. Even the mysterious architects from the galactic core had examined the quantum matrix and concluded that the damage was irreversible. The station had become a symbol of the limits of technological achievement, a reminder that some problems simply could not be solved. Now it was about to become humanity's test. High Chancellor Zeth stood in the observation deck overlooking the station's massive engineering section, surrounded by the Council's most respected scientists and military observers. The decision to test human capabilities had been controversial, but the Council needed to understand what they were dealing with. If humans failed to repair the quantum core, it would prove their reputation was exaggerated. If they succeeded, the Council would have valuable data about human problem-solving methods. Nobody expected what actually happened. The human engineer selected for the test was Tom Bradley, a maintenance specialist from the Terran Deep Space Fleet. Tom had volunteered for the assignment with the casual enthusiasm that the aliens were learning to recognize as a warning sign. He arrived at Nexus Station wearing standard work clothes and carrying a toolbox that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts found in various junkyards across the galaxy. Tom spent 37 minutes examining the quantum core while the assembled observers watched through reinforced barriers designed to protect them from dimensional energy leaks. The core itself was a massive crystalline structure suspended in a containment field, surrounded by control systems that used technology beyond the understanding of most species present. The human walked around the core twice, poked at various components with simple tools, and even knocked on one section with his knuckles as if listening for something. The alien scientists exchanged knowing looks. This was exactly the kind of primitive approach they expected from a species that had only recently achieved interstellar travel. Then Tom straightened up, turned to his assistant, and spoke the words that would fundamentally alter the Council's understanding of reality. "Well, I think I see the problem. Hey, Mike, hold my beer." The observers leaned forward with anticipation. Finally, they would see human limitations exposed. The quantum core had defied repair by civilizations with technology, thousands of years more advanced than humanity's. Whatever Tom attempted would surely fail, proving that human capabilities were limited to simple mechanical problems. Tom began by completely ignoring every safety protocol that had been developed for working with dimensional energy. He walked directly into the containment field, which should have instantly disintegrated any living tissue it contacted. Instead, the field seemed to recognize his presence and adjusted its parameters to accommodate him. The alien scientists stared in disbelief as Tom began dismantling control systems with tools that were completely inappropriate for the task. He used a simple wrench to adjust quantum resonance frequencies, connected power conduits with electrical tape, and at one point appeared to be having an actual conversation with the quantum field itself. "Look, I know you're upset about being broken for 300 years, Tom said to the empty air around the core. "But staying mad isn't fixing anything. Let's just try to work together here." Dr. Foster watched her instruments go insane as reality began behaving in ways that violated everything she knew about physics. The quantum field was responding to Tom's words and actions as if it were a living entity capable of understanding human psychology. Energy patterns that had been chaotic for centuries suddenly began stabilizing into coherent flows. Tom continued his work with the confidence of someone who had never been told that what he was attempting was impossible. He rerouted dimensional energy through pathways that the original designers had never intended, bypassed safety systems that existed to prevent catastrophic explosions, and somehow convinced the quantum matrix to operate at frequencies that should have torn holes in space-time. The most disturbing part was that he made it look easy. "The problem is that whoever built this thing was overthinking it," Tom explained to his fascinated audience as he worked. "They tried to control every variable instead of letting the quantum field find its own balance. Sometimes you just have to trust the machine to know what it wants to do." The aliens watched in horror as Tom began using techniques that could not possibly work. He hit the quantum resonance chamber with a hammer until it started humming in harmony with the dimensional field. He twisted control cables together in patterns that made their instruments scream warnings about imminent disaster. At one point, he actually argued with the core's artificial intelligence system until it agreed to restart using parameters that violated its own programming. Then something impossible happened. The quantum core came online. Not only did it work, but it immediately began operating at 400% of its original efficiency. Energy readings showed output levels that should have been physically impossible to achieve. The dimensional field had somehow been optimized beyond the theoretical limits that the galaxy's best scientists had calculated. Tom wiped his hands on his work clothes and picked up his tools with the satisfied expression of someone who had just completed a routine maintenance job. There you go. Should run smooth for another few centuries now. I also fixed that wobble in the artificial gravity and upgraded the power distribution system while I was at it. The silence in the observation deck was absolute. Every species present had just witnessed a human accomplish something that 300 years of advanced science had declared impossible. Worse, Tom had done it using methods that made no sense according to any known principles of engineering or physics. High Chancellor Zeth was the first to find his voice. "How did you know those techniques would work?" Tom shrugged. "My dad always said that machines are like people. Sometimes they just need someone to listen to what they are trying to tell you." This old girl was lonely and frustrated from being broken so long. She just needed a little encouragement and some creative problem solving. The implications were staggering. Humans did not just ignore the laws of physics when solving problems. They appeared to have developed a relationship with technology itself that allowed them to convince reality to cooperate with their intentions. The quantum core had not been repaired through advanced science or sophisticated equipment. It had been fixed through pure human stubbornness and the kind of creative thinking that treated impossible as merely inconvenient. Dr. Foster updated her research files with numb fingers. The human had not just succeeded at their test. Tom had redefined what success meant by accomplishing something that was better than their best-case scenario. The Council's experiment had not proven human limitations. It had revealed that humanity's capabilities were far more terrifying than anyone had imagined. As Tom packed his tools and prepared to leave the station, he turned to the assembled observers with a friendly smile. "Let me know if you need anything else fixed. My crew loves a good challenge, and we have got plenty more where I came from." The aliens watched him go with the dawning realization that they had just made the most frightening discovery in galactic history. Humans were not unusual because they could accomplish impossible tasks. They were terrifying because they enjoyed doing it, and they were just getting started. 6 months after the Nexus Station incident, the phrase, "hold my beer," had become the most closely monitored combination of words in galactic history. The Council's emergency response protocols now included immediate evacuation procedures for any system where the phrase was detected in human communications, and the human monitoring protocol had evolved into the largest intelligence operation ever undertaken by the galactic government. Commander Rax of the patrol fleet finished reading the latest incident report and felt his scales turn the pale blue color that indicated deep stress among his species. A human construction crew had been hired to build a simple communications relay on a remote asteroid. The job should have taken 3 months using standard procedures and approved materials. Instead, the crew had finished in 2 weeks after their foreman said the phrase and decided to get creative with the engineering specifications. The communications relay they built was not just functional. It was somehow receiving signals from parallel dimensions and had begun translating languages that did not exist in their reality. The crew had accidentally created the galaxy's first interdimensional communication device while trying to build a simple radio tower, and they were treating it as a minor upgrade to the original plan. The incident report was filed alongside thousands of similar cases that had accumulated since humanity joined the galactic community. Human farmers were growing crops that violated biological laws. Human mechanics were repairing spacecraft using materials that should not have been compatible, and human engineers were solving problems by methods that made established science look primitive and overcomplicated. The most disturbing development was that other species were beginning to study human methods. The Catherian Science Collective had published papers on applied human logic and theoretical impossibility engineering. Several military academies now offered courses on creative problem-solving through controlled recklessness. The humans were not just changing how problems were solved. They were changing how the galaxy thought about problems in the first place. Ambassador Williams sat in his office aboard Harmony Gate, completely unaware that his species had become the subject of fearful whispers throughout the known galaxy. He was reading reports from Earth about humanity's expanding role in galactic civilization and feeling proud of how well the integration was progressing. Humans were being hired for jobs across hundreds of worlds, and their reputation for getting impossible things done was opening doors to opportunities that diplomacy alone could never have achieved. His assistant, Rebecca, entered with the daily communication summaries, including a message from Earth's military command that made Williams smile with pride. "Sir, Admiral Parker sends his congratulations on the successful diplomatic relations. He also mentioned that if we encounter any serious problems out here, Earth's military has a new saying that might be useful. They call it, 'Hold my beer' and 'Watch this.'" The words were picked up by the station's monitoring systems and immediately flagged for emergency analysis. Within seconds, alerts began flashing across every Council intelligence network in the galaxy. The phrase that had already terrified civilizations across 3 spiral arms had apparently evolved into something even more ominous. Dr. Foster received the alert in her expanded research facility, which now employed over 200 specialists, studying human linguistic patterns and their relationship to impossible achievements. The new phrase triggered every monitoring protocol simultaneously and sent her research team into a state of controlled panic that was becoming unfortunately familiar. Her analysis revealed the horrifying truth. Humans had been unconsciously holding back their true capabilities out of politeness and consideration for their new alien neighbors. The phrase, "Hold my beer," represented casual problem-solving when humans were relaxed and confident. But "hold my beer and watch this" appeared to be what humans said when they were genuinely challenged or motivated to demonstrate their full potential. The implications were beyond terrifying. If humans could accomplish impossible tasks while being considerate of alien sensibilities, what were they capable of when they were actively trying to impress someone? The answer came sooner than anyone wanted to discover. A trade dispute had erupted between the Andromedian Empire and the Crystalline Collective over mining rights in a contested system. Both sides had assembled massive fleets and were prepared for a war that could destabilize entire sectors of the galaxy. Diplomatic efforts had failed, and the situation was deteriorating rapidly toward armed conflict. Then humanity offered to mediate. The negotiation took place aboard a neutral station with representatives from both sides. The talks had been deadlocked for hours when the Andromedian admiral made the mistake of questioning whether humans were qualified to understand the complexities of interstellar politics. The human mediator, a quiet woman named Patricia, listened to the admiral's condescending speech about humanity's primitive understanding of galactic affairs. Then she smiled and spoke the words that would end the conflict in the most unexpected way possible. "Admiral, I appreciate your concern about our qualifications. Rebecca, hold my beer and watch this." What followed redefined the concept of diplomatic negotiation. Patricia did not present logical arguments or appeal to common interests. Instead, she somehow convinced both sides that their dispute was based on fundamental misunderstandings about quantum mechanics and dimensional resource extraction. She drew diagrams on the conference table using a simple marker that revealed New mathematical principles governing space, time, and matter. By the end of her presentation, both fleets had not only agreed to peaceful resource sharing, but had also formed a joint scientific expedition to explore the implications of Patricia's casual revision of physics. The trade dispute became a collaborative research project that would benefit both civilizations for generations to come. The galactic community finally understood what they were dealing with. Humans were not just another species with unusual abilities. They were a fundamental force of change that improved everything they encountered, whether they meant to or not. The phrase, "hold my beer," was not a warning about dangerous human behavior. It was an announcement that reality was about to be upgraded. High Chancellor Zeth convened a final emergency session to address the new galactic order. The council chambers were packed with representatives who had come to witness the formal acknowledgement of humanity's unique role in galactic civilization. We have learned that our new human members possess capabilities that transcend our understanding of possibility itself, the Chancellor announced. They do not simply solve problems. They convince the universe that better solutions exist and then make those solutions reality through pure determination and creative thinking. The formal resolution passed unanimously. Humanity would be granted special status as universal problem solvers with unlimited authority to attempt solutions to any challenge that faced galactic civilization. The phrase, "hold my beer," would be treated as a declaration of beneficial intent, and "hold my beer and watch this" would trigger immediate support protocols to help humans accomplish whatever impossible task they were about to attempt. Ambassador. Williams accepted the Council's resolution with the same casual confidence that had started the entire adventure. We appreciate the recognition, and we promise to continue doing our best to help wherever we can. Just remember that humans are always willing to lend a hand when things look impossible. After all, impossible just means nobody has figured out how to do it yet. As the ceremony concluded and the various delegates prepared to spread the news, across their respective civilizations, the galaxy settled into its new reality. Humanity had not conquered the stars through superior technology or military might. They had simply convinced the universe that impossible was just another word for challenge accepted, and the cosmos had apparently decided to cooperate with their suggestions. The age of human solutions had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.